Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach, and you're listening to Arts Beat here on 89.5 FM, WSKB, and Westfield Community Programming Comcast 15. We're broadcasting today from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy because some of the people behind the scenes are young students at Westfield Tech, and they are learning the ropes of sound and broadcast and equipment and stuff. My guest today is David Kidwell, who is the director of the Holyoke Civic Symphony Orchestra. He is a Renaissance man of sorts. He's a composer. He is a church music leader. He is currently in the orchestra pit at Billy Elliot at Goodspeed, and of course, he's a composer as well. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I know you're a busy guy right now with like a juggler with all these things going on. So what are some of the things you're working on at the moment?
The main thing is Goodspeed Opera House playing for Billy Elliot. I'm the principal keyboard 2 player. So I'm playing for 61 performances of that, and we're getting close to the end of the run, but it's been a wonderful experience. That's what I've been driving up and down the road mostly for, but
a lot of Christmas concerts scheduled, right?
We have one scheduled with the orchestra, with the Holyoke Civic Symphony. It's on Sunday, December 8th, and I'm pretty excited because we usually perform at Holyoke Community College, but this time we're actually performing downtown in Holyoke at the United Congregational Church on Appleton Street. And so we've never performed there before. So we're doing all these logistical things and trying to figure out where to put people but they have a wonderful sanctuary and this beautiful historic Skinner pipe organ, and so we're going to be using that, featuring that in the first piece on the program is the organ concerto by Francis Poulenc, and it's one of my favorite pieces. And the organist at the church, Roberta Morgan, is going to be our soloist for that.
How many musicians are involved in the symphony?
It's usually about between 50 and 60, depending on the given concert or how big the pieces are, but something like that, 50 to 60.
And is it primarily classical music or new music or pops? Or
we do a little bit of everything. I mean, it's a lot of classical music, but since I'm a composer myself, I like to make sure that we do at least one work on every concert by a living composer. And actually, the most recent concert we did in October, we had 2 living composers, Jerry Noble and Gwyneth Walker, and we did premieres of 2 of their pieces, and they were in the audience, and so it was a lot of pressure to get things right, but it was great it's always great to have living composers there, and they can come to rehearsals and tell us how they want something to go, and you can't ask Brahms how you want something to go. He can't tell you, but living composers can.
Since you're a composer and you're dealing with living composers, do you have an opportunity before you go into rehearsal to get the composer's intent and have a conversation about what the composer wants before they actually go into rehearsal?
Yep, and sometimes if they're actually writing the piece for us, which sometimes happens, actually both of these pieces were written for us, and so I was involved at the beginning, like specifying the instrumentation that would be good, and Gwyneth actually sent me a couple of early drafts of the piece for comments, and how do you think this will work with your players, and it's just a great, I love the back and forth of that as a composer and a conductor.
I have a question. When they write a piece of music, they write a melody line, so should they actually orchestrate the same piece of music that they're writing?
I'm not sure what you're...
Or arranging it? I mean, do they...
Oh, if they're arranging.
Do they arrange the music that they compose?
Yes, yeah. They orchestrate it for the orchestra. Yeah, like a lot of Broadway shows are orchestrated by someone different, not the composer.
Right.
Like Billy Elliot. Elton John didn't do the orchestration. There was another orchestrator. But yeah, usually for classical pieces or contemporary pieces, the composer will do everything, all the parts and everything.
So you're composing, and you've got a piece that's being performed this season, but I believe it's in the spring.
It's in May. I think it's May 3rd. It's our season finale concert.
And since you're the composer and the conductor, can you talk back and forth to yourself, or do you bring somebody in to kind of take a look, see, and say, hey, this is good. Maybe you should do this. Maybe you should do that.
Definitely. I mean, this was a piece that I originally wrote back in 2002 for the orchestra. It's basically my first symphony, although I don't call it Symphony Number 1. But it was my first big piece for orchestra that I wrote, and I had been with the orchestra for about 5 years at that point. And there's just no better teacher of composition and orchestration than actually standing in front of an orchestra every week and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And it was a process. I would give them early drafts and say, "Can you play this?" And then I would make alterations to it. And they've done the piece. They've played it a couple of times over the years, but this particular performance, I'm preparing a whole new set of parts and a score, because I mean, when it was written back in 2002, the notation software had its limitations back then, and software is so much better now, and so I want to prepare a brand new set of parts that I can market to other orchestras, and so my orchestra will be sort of the guinea pig for that. They can hopefully find all of the typos and whatever, and so it'll be a nice process.
There are actually typos in music?
Yes, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. So there's software, and you input it. You must have a keyboard that's attached to
my laptop. Yep.
And you input it. So that means that if you're orchestrating or arranging your piece, let's say for the Holyoke Symphony, which has 50 musicians playing, and somebody else says, we'd like to take that piece and perform it, and they have 35 musicians, the computer helps arrange it? Or
well, not necessarily. I mean, for an orchestral piece, the range in players would probably be in the string sections. Like we have 8 first violins. A professional orchestra might have 16 first violins. But the other parts, like you would always have a first flute and a second flute, and first oboe and a second oboe. The winds and brass would be pretty standardized. I mean, like rewriting it for a chamber orchestra or something like that would be a lot of extra work.
Now, you compose for a lot of different media. I know that you've composed stuff to be performed in church, and you have small compositions in terms of the number of musicians and large. Do you have a preference for what you compose? What causes you or influences you to compose a specific piece?
Usually, if I have a group that is willing to perform something that I'm interested in writing, like the orchestra was very open to playing my music, and it's just nice conducting a church choir, because I have 4-part singers right there, and an organ and a piano, and I can do the same thing. I can try out different things and make changes if it doesn't work, but usually I do have a specific performance or publication in mind. I'm not just composing because I have the urge. It's just I have a project coming up.
How long does it take to compose a piece of music? Is when you get from the point that you get the idea to actually sitting down and bringing it to its final state for performance?
It depends on the size of the piece. I mean, I'm writing a lot of organ pieces now, and if I get inspired, I can do one in 2 or 3 days sometimes. But the orchestra piece, that was a 25-minute piece for full orchestra, and that took me probably a good 6 months of just working 8 hours a day. And I was totally focused on that. I had no idea what else was going on in the world at that point.
Do you find that you're composing with a thought in mind of like a particular theme, or are you inspired, let's say, by a poem or a book or something happening in the world?
Yeah, I find it more difficult to write, say, absolute music, like music that has no external inspiration. I enjoy writing music for voices because you have a text that you can start with. I enjoy writing for organ because I'm usually doing like an arrangement of a hymn or something, and it gives me a good starting place. I know I'm going to be working with this melody, or I know I have to do a 3-minute piece or whatever. If there are too many variables, then sometimes I just don't know where to start.
Is there, once you've composed them, I mean, do you have, for example, a library where people could go listen to your work or read the score if they were interested?
I actually just rebuilt, I had someone do a new website for me. I mean, I've had a website for years, but it was in need of refreshing. So I've just gotten a new website. It's davidkidwell.net. And I have compositions for sale. You can buy them right there on the website, and you get PDFs automatically downloaded, and you can listen to clips of pieces. So, yeah.
So when other people perform, or other orchestras or ensembles perform your work, do you go to see and hear them, or watch the rehearsal process?
If they're local, yes, I love doing that. The Wyndham Orchestra in Broward. And they invited me to a rehearsal, and I came to the performance. And Pioneer Valley Symphony did a piece of mine a while back, and yeah, I love doing that.
Where did all this music start for you? When did you get interested in music, and what was the path that you took to get to where you are?
Well, I grew up in Virginia, and I just remember always enjoying music and being drawn to it. I had a record, or my parents had a record that sort of introduced all the instruments of the orchestra. Each instrument would play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, like 8 measures of it, and they would say, this is the violin, and this is the viola, and here's the whole string section together. And I just remember being fascinated by that. And that was even before I'd started taking lessons. I didn't start taking piano lessons until I was 9. But I knew, I think I was 12 when I decided, I'm going to be a musician when I grow up. I didn't even know what that entailed, but I knew that was what I wanted to do. And I went to college in Virginia, Mary Washington College, and originally I wanted to be a concert pianist, and then I discovered composing, that I really enjoyed composing and having my own pieces performed, and so I decided to get a master's degree in composition, and I went to the Hart School of Music in Hartford, and after that, it was just a short move up to the Pioneer Valley, and I've been here ever since.
And you certainly, Hart School is a great place to study music.
Yep. Yeah, I had some wonderful composition teachers there, James Sellers and Robert Carl. It was great because they didn't. Some composition teachers will not force you, but encourage you to write in their own particular style. And at Hart, they didn't do that. They let you go in whatever direction you wanted to go. I mean, they still pushed you to challenge yourself, but like I was never into 12-tone serialism or atonal music, and they never pushed me into those directions.
You primarily write for classical music ensembles. Have you ever been interested, or have you done any writing for the theater or for film?
No, not for film. I wrote a children's musical about Jonah and the whale, and I love theater, but I've actually never really written anything for it. I mean, I don't write lyrics. So I've never really found a lyricist to collaborate on a project like that. But I'm fascinated with music theater orchestration, especially, and just hearing how all the instruments fit together. Sometimes it's the challenge being in the Goodspeed pit to stay focused on my own part and playing my own part, because I'm constantly listening. I think that's a nice combination there. I need to remember that, and maybe I would do that differently. And so my mind is always wandering in the pit.
Well, now, like in the case of Billy Elliot, when a Broadway show is on Broadway or on a big national tour, generally there's 20 musicians in the pit, and at Goodspeed, the pit only holds, I believe, 8 or 9.
Yes.
So all of the music of, like, for example, a Billy Elliot was reorchestrated for Goodspeed.
It was. Dan DeLange is a fantastic orchestrator, and he's done most of the Goodspeed shows for the last 15 years or so, I think. And so he knows the limitations. The player, you can only fit pretty much 8 people in the pit. But at Goodspeed we have 2 keyboards, and we use a program called MainStage, which has it has samples of pretty much any instrument you could think of. And Dan is just so great at picking out things for the 2 keyboards to play that sort of fill in and complement the live instruments. Like my keyboard 2 part has, we usually have one trumpet player and 1 trombone player in the pit. And a lot of times my keyboard part will be covering 2nd trumpet and 3rd trumpet. And it's just, the sound people at Goodspeed are amazing too. That just make it sound like it's a 3-person trumpet section. And Dan DeLange is just great at making 8 people sound like 20. It's just amazing to hear his orchestrations.
And when you're sitting there in the pit playing keyboard, can you really see what's going on stage?
No, unfortunately I can't. Other players in the pit can. Just the way the 2 keyboards are set up, keyboard 1 is the conductor of the show. He plays and conducts, and so he has to see the stage. And so I'm keyboard 2, and I'm actually facing him, so I have my back to the stage. I'm actually, my back, I can lean back and lean on the lip of the stage. So I can look back and see a few things, but there's so much in Billy Elliot that I wish I could see what's going on. Like the whole ballet, the Swan Lake ballet scene, I'm sure is amazing because it gets just huge cheers every night, and I can't see what's going on up there. So.
Well, I had talked about Goodspeed and Billy Elliot on this program before, and I'd reviewed it. I was surprised that Elton John's music was as sophisticated as it is and so linked to the musical, whereas things like his other Broadway compositions, which are all very good, are almost totally unrelated to his pop music.
Right.
But you could pick out a song from some of the other musicals that he's done and do it standing alone without any background, and it sounds like a pop tune.
Right.
And in Billy Elliot, it's so linked together with what's happening. There's really no standout number that you'd be humming.
Right. I've thought that too. Like Lion King. I mean, I'm really impressed with Elton John's music for the theater. I mean, Lion King, he writes all these African-inspired things, but then you have "Can You Feel the Love Tonight," which is a pop song. But in Billy Elliot, it's like Elton John writing folk music and English brass band music, and yeah, it's much more harmonically sophisticated than I would expect from. I mean, I love Elton John, but he's really stretching himself as a composer, and I haven't gotten tired of the music. I've been playing it 6 times a week pretty much for the last 6 weeks, and I'm still enjoying it and hearing new things in it.
Well, we're going to take a quick break because we have underwriters to acknowledge who make ArtsBeat Radio and TV possible. But before we go to that break, Billy Elliot runs until right before Thanksgiving, and the ticket information and all of that is at goodspeed.org. And David, you have your own website, so you should tell us about that.
It's davidkidwell.net. It's a brand spanking new website. Go check it out.
So when we take this break, you can be one of the first people to check out the new website. I'm Mark Auerbach. This is ArtsBeat Radio here on 89.5 FM WSKB on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15. Peter Coles is our chief engineer today. We're broadcasting from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy. We'll thank our underwriters, and we'll be right back.
By Bay State Noble Hospital, a brand new name for a Westfield institution which is improving the health of our community every day with quality and compassion. Noble Hospital and Bay State Health. better together.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley, with convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut. Visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
It's Tuesday morning from 6 till 8. Wow, it's Tuesday with Bob Plass.
Community Radio
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach here in the studio today with David Kidwell, who's the composer, the music director of the Holyoke Civic Symphony, and he's a keyboard guy right now at Billy Elliot at Goodspeed. And when we went to the break, we were talking a little bit about your sitting in the pit at Billy Elliot. Billy Elliot's an interesting show because it has a lot of kids in it.
There's 6 kids in the show, and they're between, right now they're between 11 and 13 years old. We actually had, one of the boys was 10, and he recently turned 13. But they're just so professional. It's so weird to see these kids and doing such an amazing job, especially the 2 Billies. The role of Billy Elliot is double cast. They're 2 Billies and they alternate performances, and they're very different physically. They're both 13 years old, but one looks a couple of years younger, and his voice is a little bit higher, and he's just a very sweet Billy. And the other Billy is he's taller and a little bit bigger, and he really excels at the angry Billy. The angry dance is the big Act 1 finale, and he's just great at that. But I think it's kind of amazing that the directors have let these 2 actors have their own individual takes on the title role. But just to see them, I mean, we all hang out in the green room before all the shows, and the kids are getting dressed and getting mic'd up, and they're just all wound up and loud and bouncing off the walls and being typical 11, 12-year-old kids. And then they get on stage, and the Billies, they're not just on stage, they're commanding the stage. They're just doing such an amazing job.
And the young kids that are part of there's one, I can't remember the character's name that he played, but he was like Billy's best friend.
Michael, yes.
Yeah, and he seemed to be much younger.
He's the one that was 10 and has just turned 11, but he's somewhat small for his age, so he seems like he looks like he might be 9 years old. But I mean, he's and that role is not double cast. He's done every single performance, and he has a solo song where he's basically cross-dressing and talking about how wonderful it is to be yourself. And I'm just so impressed with him. I mean, and then to see the difference between him off stage and on stage. It's like, oh, you're a little kid now, and now you're this actor commanding the stage. It's great.
Do you have during the course of the performance run? Do they have rehearsals just to keep on top of things, or?
I believe. Well, they still have. I think they still have understudy rehearsals. I'm actually not involved with any of the rehearsals. I mean, I rehearsed with the band at the very beginning, but at least for the first couple of weeks of the show. They would have rehearsals in the morning, and then sometimes performance in the afternoon and performance in the evening. But that was when the director was still there and still working out the bugs and things.
Because Goodspeed's so small, where do you have rehearsals for the orchestra?
Well, they have there's a rehearsal hall that's sort of around the corner. Goodspeed has a whole campus basically. They've built a rehearsal hall, and they have actor housing. Actually, a couple of years ago there was a flood, and it damaged a lot of the buildings there, and they've rebuilt. So it's really nice housing for the actors, and nice facilities. I mean, a lot of these are New York City actors, Broadway actors, and they just love coming to Goodspeed because they have a nice place to live, and you can walk to work, and you have the river there, and it's just a beautifully scenic and quiet area.
I had said once, I've been reviewing Goodspeed for several years, and I get to see it in spring with the first show, summer in the second show, and autumn in the final show of the season. And one of the publicists said to me, you really have to see Goodspeed in the wintertime, because with the ice flows and everything else, it's really, I think it's one of the most beautiful places for a theater anywhere.
I agree. And for me, I mean, I love musical theater. I love water. So you have the Connecticut River right there and that beautiful swing bridge. And I love trains. And so you have the Essex steam train that runs just on the other side of the river. And actually, if you're coming north to the Goodspeed, there's this beautiful scenic road, 154. And all of a sudden, the trees just open up, and you see the train tracks and the river and the Goodspeed, and it's like that's it for me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just a beautiful place. Yeah. And the little town of East Haddam, which is basically Goodspeed, actually, if you go early, you can either bring a picnic and sit at a picnic table on the river. I love watching the swing bridge move, which is kind of cool. Yeah. And there's a couple of restaurants there, and then downriver in Chester, you can really make a day trip out of Goodspeed.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. Well, the Essex Steam Train, I'll put in a plug for that. That's one of my favorite places. There's good restaurants around and good theater, and it's just I pretty much for every time I go down there, I will walk down to that picnic area by the river and just stand on the dock and look at the river, and it's just such a great way to center myself before a performance.
And how much rehearsal did the orchestra get before that show opened?
We had 2 rehearsals of just the orchestra, and we actually had the orchestrator there for those, so he could give us his thoughts for balance and things, and he did reorchestrate a few things on the fly based on what he was hearing, and then we had what's called the Sitzprobe, which is when the orchestra and cast meet each other for the first time, and the cast basically sings through the show. They don't do any of their blocking or choreography. They sing through the show, and we get to hear what they're doing. And then we had the tech rehearsal in the theater, which was the day before the show opened. And that was a 12-hour day. We had tech rehearsal, and then that afternoon, and then that evening we had our dress rehearsal. And then we opened on Friday. So it was a very intense, compressed process.
Well, let's go upriver a little bit to Holyoke with the Civic Symphony. You've been there for quite a long time. What's your program like for the rest of the season? I know that you already had a concert before we taped this, but you've got several up and coming.
We've got 3 more concerts. We usually do 4 concerts in a season. The one coming up is December 8th, and that's our holiday concert. And that's the one at the church in downtown Holyoke. And that's usually our holiday concerts are half classical and half pops. And that's the same way for this one. We're doing the Poulenc organ concerto for the first half of the concert, and then second half is all Christmas and holiday pops. And we're also having the Michaela Jewish Chorus of Western Massachusetts perform with us. We actually have a new piece for this concert as well. The son of our principal clarinetist, his name is Jonah Dratfield, and he writes songs, and he wrote a song for the chorus and the orchestra to perform about Hanukkah. And we have our usual Christmas music, Leroy Anderson's Sleigh Ride. And then in March, 2020 is a big anniversary for Beethoven. It's the 250th anniversary of his birth. So we're doing Beethoven's Eighth Symphony for the March concert. And we have a pianist who was at UMass. She's now out in Kansas City, and she's going to be flying back for this concert to perform the Rachmaninoff Second Piano Concerto with us. And then finishing up the year in May, that'll be the concert where they're doing my Shenandoah Symphony. So we do 4 concerts and a pretty wide variety of music.
Now, how can people get information about that? You have a website, correct?
Yep. The orchestra's website is holyokecivicsymphony.org. And we also have a Facebook page, and you can sign up for our mailing list. I just recently I do a podcast for each concert called Minute with the Maestro, and I just talk about the music and some behind the scenes stuff about the music, and that just went out. That's up on the website and on the Facebook page.
So you have a lot of preparation to do for these concerts.
Yes, and especially for this one because it's off-site. Just trying to figure out in the church where to put everybody and where we're going to have parking and where to put the chorus and where people can warm up beforehand. And it's just, I mean, I have my to-do list on my iPad. If I didn't have that, I would be totally lost.
Now, Holyoke has got a lot of arts things that are going on now, much more than a couple of years ago. And there's there's an active campaign to renovate the Victory Theater.
Yeah.
If the Victory and when it's opened, will the Holyoke Civic Symphony be a resident company, or
I would love that. I mean, Don Sanders is the guy spearheading that, and he and I have talked in the past, and he said that if this happens, I want the Holyoke Civic Symphony to be the resident orchestra, which I think would be fantastic. But I'm not sure if that's going to happen or how far down the road it's going to happen. But yeah, there are a lot of interesting things happening in Holyoke in the arts scene.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it's as up and coming as it is, but I'm just really impressed.
Well, there's so many good locations downtown. I mean, you have all these abandoned mill buildings, which are beautiful, and they're just not being used. So the space is there, and if people have the money to put into it, I think you could have a really vibrant art scene downtown.
And a lot of people are moving into Holyoke. I mean, it's become what Northampton must have been like 20 years ago.
I think so. It was Northampton was the art center, and then that got too pricey for people, and then it sort of became East Hampton, and now that's getting too pricey for people. So I guess Holyoke is next up.
Well, you live and work in Western Massachusetts, and the creative economy is booming and bringing lots of people here. Is it possible for you as a composer, conductor, musician to make a living in Western Massachusetts now?
Oh, definitely. I've made a living as a musician for the past 30 years in the Valley, and I mean I have to do 3 or 4 different jobs to make ends meet, but I love doing it. I mean, I don't think I would do very well with a 9-to-5 desk job or something. I mean, I love the variety of what I do, and so I do a lot of work at home, a lot of composing. I mean, sometimes it can get overwhelming with, okay, I have a show tonight and I have to get ready for choir practice and I have to finish this piece by next week and then Christmas coming up. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but most of the time I love what I do. And
in terms of living and working in the Valley, if you were to talk with somebody going to one of the music or theater programs, because the 5 colleges do have performing arts and programs, would you Tell us, if you were mentoring somebody, would you say make it work here, or do you feel that people have to go to a big city first and then come here?
No, I think you can make it here. I mean, there are people who live in the Hartford area and travel to New York to play in Broadway pits, and it's a lot of driving, but you can do it. But there are definitely opportunities here. I mean, I remember when I was in college, I wish I had someone to tell me, if you want to do this, here's what you can do in the music business. I wish I had a class in sort of, how to make a living as a musician. And now there are classes like that, and I think students have a better idea of what's possible out there.
We got to continue that form of conversation, but we need to take another break. We have underwriters to acknowledge. Peter Coles is our chief engineer today on ArtsBeat Radio and TV. I'm Mark Auerbach. Our guest is David Kidwell. We'll be back after a couple of announcements.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Comcast and Xfinity.com, offering Xfinity TV, Internet, home phone, and home security services. Information on all that Xfinity has to offer in the Westfield area is available online at Xfinity.com. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donuts shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
It's Tuesday morning from 6 till 8. Wow, it's Tuesday with Bob Plass.
Community Radio 89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach. This is ArtsBeat Radio. My guest today is David Kidwell. We're from the Holyoke Civic Symphony and from the orchestra at Goodspeed Musicals. And you have you're a church organist, and you're like a Renaissance man in music.
Well, I appreciate that. That's quite a compliment.
Before we went to the break, we were talking about how to make a living in the creative economy in Western Massachusetts, which has really just jumped with a lot of creatives moving in, and they're filmmakers and videographers, actors, directors, gaming designers, and the support people. And more of them are saying it's possible to live and make a living here in Western Massachusetts and the Valley. What attracted you to stay? You went to Hart, but what attracted you to stay in Western Massachusetts?
Well, I was driving through the area. My girlfriend at the time, we were living in West Hartford while I was in graduate school, and her grandmother lived in Worcester. So we would go up to Northampton and head out to Worcester to see her, and we'd often stop and have lunch or dinner or just wander around town, and we just fell in love with this area. So it was more the food and the scenery that attracted us originally. I didn't really know much about the art scene when I first moved to the area. I became aware of the Pioneer Valley Symphony, and I played violin with them for a number of years and was their assistant conductor for a couple of years. And Valley Light Opera was another organization that I became aware of pretty quickly after moving here, and played violin with them too, and music directed for them for a while. And that just led to other opportunities and church jobs.
So you play piano, you play violin. Do you play any other instruments?
Organ. I used to play trumpet and trombone, but I haven't for years, so I won't count those. And I actually don't play violin very much anymore. I keep it in my studio to test out little things and different bowing styles if I want to tell the orchestra something. But usually I play once a year, I have friends who live on the Cape, and they play in the orchestra, actually. One is a violinist and one's a cellist. And so they always tell me to bring my violin so we can do string trios. So when I go out to see them, that's the only time I play violin anymore, pretty much.
Which came first, violin, piano?
Piano came first. I started when I was 9, and I didn't pick up violin until college, and it was more for compositional purposes. I wanted to know how to write for violin, so there was a professional violinist in my hometown, and I started taking lessons from him, and I was already pretty accomplished on piano and knew a lot about music, and so this teacher was able to give me sort of a very accelerated course in violin, and I picked it up pretty quickly.
Let's talk a little bit about your church music, because you do a lot of that not only as a conductor and a music director, but you compose.
Yep.
As well. Where are you doing that?
I'm at Edwards Church in Northampton, and I've been there for 20 years now. I started in 2000, and it's a wonderful church. It's a fantastic choir. It's a beautiful pipe organ. I'm very happy there. And I'm composing a lot for organ these days. A friend of mine, Carson Kuhlman, is the organ editor for Lorenz Publications, and that's one of the big publishing houses in the church music world. And he was, after I got to know him, and he commissioned a few pieces from me, and then he was appointed the organ editor for Lorenz. And so he's asked me to write several books for them, books of organ pieces. And I'm working on I think it's my 4th book, working on finishing that. And then I have plans for a 5th book after that.
Wow. I didn't really, how do you get your music published? I mean, you were talking about you're doing it for this one publishing house, but
Yep.
your orchestral music and other things, do you have to, like being a playwright, send it around to a group of places, or how does it work?
I tried doing that for years, just sending pieces to different publishers, and never got much luck. But today, I think the trend is more towards self-publishing. I mean, with music software, composers can have a very professional looking output for their pieces, and if you have a website like I do, I mean, I sell my pieces on my website, and I mean, the thing with professional publishers is that they have a much larger reach, and they can promote the pieces a lot better. So I'm grateful to Lorenz for that fact, because just people all across the country are purchasing my books and my anthems that are published by them, and people that I probably couldn't have reached just through my website.
When you do sell a piece of music through your website, is it only for them, or can they only do one performance of it, or one performance series of 2 or 3, or do they, when they buy it, have it for life?
They have it for life. There's actually, the music business is just so complicated. I mean, you can buy a piece of music, and that's one part of it, but then performing it is another part of it. And ideally, if a piece gets performed, there's what's called performing rights organizations like ASCAP. You keep track of, like, if an orchestra performs my work, either I have to report that they performed it, or they report that they performed it, and then I get some residuals from that. But it's hard to keep track of who all is performing everything.
I would assume. And have you done any recordings of your own, like taken some of the things that you put together and actually put it out there as a CD? Or
no, I haven't actually sold any CDs. I mean, we've done a couple of live recordings of Holyoke Civic Symphony concerts that have included my pieces, and sometimes we'll sell those at intermission. But I really don't have any for sale on my website.
How many pieces are you working on at the moment? Do you start and finish one and then move on to the next, or can you have multiple pieces that you're working on?
I have to do one piece at a time, because I was talking with with my friend Gwyneth Walker about this, and she has many more compositional projects than I do, but she also just does one at a time. She says you just get so much into the world of whatever piece you're working on that it's just impossible to do anything else. And I'm the same way. Even if they're very similar organ pieces, if I'm like my current book, I'm working on arrangements of different hymns, and they're all pretty similar in style, but I have to do one at a time. That's just the way I work, and I guess the way a lot of composers work.
That's the whole thing is amazing to me, and how that happens.
It's I don't know how it happens. I mean, I don't know how I access my muse. Usually, I'm just sitting at the keyboard and improvising, and if I like something, I'll write it down, and eventually, I'll combine different pieces, but it rarely comes. A lot of people think compositions come to composers fully formed, and it never happens that way. Unfortunately, I wish it did.
Wow! I mean, again, I am totally amazed. Who are the musicians of the Holyoke Symphony?
They come from all over the Pioneer Valley. I think some are as far away as Pittsfield, and they are a variety of ages and different backgrounds. I think our youngest musician is probably 18, and our oldest, I believe, is 89. And some of them are musicians in real life, and some are lawyers and doctors, and they're people who like getting together once a week to make music and have it.
And do they audition, or and once they get in, do they re-audition, or are they there for life?
No, they're kind of there for life, for better or for worse. But no, I've always been very nervous when I've had to audition myself, and I don't enjoy the process. And I kind of tell people who are interested in the orchestra and also in my church choir, I say that I'm not going to audition you. I want you to audition us. So I invite them to come to a rehearsal and sit in and play or sing, and just see how they like it. And if they like it, they can stay. And there are limitations with the orchestra. I mean, I already have 3 flutes, and so I can't add any more flutes at the moment. But I could add some cellos if there are any cellists out there who want to play.
So how many people are support team at the orchestra? I mean, do you have who sets up the stands and who does the technical things and who schedules rehearsals and all of that?
Well, we have a business manager, Emily Lewis, who's been with the orchestra for a long time, and she's wonderful. And at Holyoke Community College, we have a technical director at the theater for concerts, and he's in charge of the lights and the sound, and we generally have a stage manager for concerts. But orchestra members do a lot on their own, a lot of setting up on their own, and I do a lot myself, just for figuring out scheduling and putting stuff on the website, keeping the website.
Do you keep
current.
a podium in the trunk of the car?
Actually, I do. I wish I had someone to transport my podium for me, but I'm a conductor who has to carry my own podium.
You have to carry your own batons. You don't have help for that.
Nope.
So people can find out about the Holyoke Civic Symphony at
HolyokeCivicSymphony.org,
okay.
Or on Facebook. We have a Facebook page.
And I notice, I mean, I follow your Facebook page. You post a lot of information out there.
Yeah, we try to, especially like the week leading up to a concert. I'll try to post something interesting every day about the upcoming concert.
And where can people find your podcasts?
That would be on the website. We have a page on there that says Minute with the Maestro, and that has I think I've done probably 50 of them over the past years, and they're all there. but I do post those on the Facebook page as well.
Terrific. We're going to take another break to acknowledge our underwriters. And don't forget to tune in next week when we have members of the Albany Berkshire Ballet Company coming to talk about their production of Nutcracker, which performs throughout New England, and they'll be in the Berkshires and also at Springfield Symphony Hall. So you'll want to tune in next week for that. This is Artsbeat Radio. I'm Mark Auerbach. With me today, David Kidwell, the Renaissance musician of Broadway work at Goodspeed, the Holyoke Civic Symphony, church performances, compositions, and the whole works. And you're listening to 89.5 FM, WSKB, and Westfield Community Programming on Channel 15 Comcast. And Peter Coles is our chief engineer this morning, and we'll be right back.
Support for community radio on WSKB is provided by Betts Plumbing and Heating Supply Company, an independent, family-owned wholesaler serving Westfield for over 50 years, specializing in plumbing, heating, and industrial piping supplies. On the web at bettsplumbing.com or at 14 Coleman Avenue in Westfield. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Barnes & Noble College Bookstore in the Ely Campus Center, offering Westfield State t-shirts, sweatshirts, and gift merchandise, all of your academic needs, and offering textbook materials in new, used, ebook, and rental formats. Available at the bookstore on campus or online at westfieldState.bncollege.com.
Support for community radio on WSKB provided by Westfield Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568-3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
It's Tuesday morning from 6 till 8. Wow, it's Tuesday with Bob Plass.
Community Radio 89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Artsbeat Radio and TV, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach, your host. Peter Coles is our chief engineer today, and David Kidwell is our guest. You do so many different things in music, but when you're not working in music, what kind of music do you listen to?
It's funny, anything but what I'm currently working on. Like driving home from the show, from after a performance of Billy Elliot or whatever at Goodspeed. I need to get that music out of my head, and so I'll turn on the radio and set it to scan, and if it lands on 80s pop music, then that's where it stays. That's kind of my go-to. But like smooth piano jazz, American songbook, stuff like that. Anything that's not related to what I'm currently working on.
And when you are working, for example, when you're driving down to Goodspeed, which is about an hour and a half maybe, depending on how the Hartford traffic is at the time that you're going, do you listen to music from Billy Elliot to get you in mode, or do you listen to news? Or
No, I'll often listen to the public radio station down there. If I'm going to a matinee, then usually Fresh Air is on, so I'll listen to that. It's funny with Billy Elliot, I'm not usually the principal player for Goodspeed shows. I'm usually a substitute. So I only get to play generally for like 15 or 20, 25 performances of a production. And for Billy Elliot, I'm playing 61 performances. And so there's really usually only 2 days will go by when I'm not playing. The show's dark on Mondays and Tuesdays, and so I don't practice the show because I'm constantly playing it. When I'm subbing for a show, my girlfriend told me, I usually hear you upstairs playing the show all the time, and for Billy Elliot, I never hear you. it's because I'm constantly playing it. And so no, I don't listen to it when I'm driving down, because it's already in my head and it's already in my fingers.
When you're a sub player, and they call you up and they say, David, you have to perform tonight, do you practice the score? How long in advance do you get it so that you can learn it?
Well, the substitute schedule is set up pretty far in advance of the show, like 2 months or so before the show opens. I'll email the principal player. He will email me some dates and find out if I'm available, and then I'll get the music. We usually get the parts like 2 weeks before the first orchestra rehearsal, and oftentimes I will play like the first weekend that a show opens. It's a really interesting setup at the Goodspeed, because Bill Thomas is the usual principal 2 player who I sub for. But then during a run, Bill will shift over to become the conductor for the show after a couple of weeks, because the music director who had been conducting then starts rehearsing the next show in the lineup. And so when Bill takes over conducting, then I start filling in for him on keyboard 2. And it's always a challenge because substitutes don't get to rehearse. You just get thrown in, and here you are in a live performance, and yeah, it's thrilling and terrifying.
Have you played in other pit orchestras and other shows?
Well, I was a music director for community theater for 20 years or so, I guess, and I did a ton of shows as music director and conducting from the piano. And since I've been at Goodspeed, I haven't done any community theater, but occasionally shows on tour will pick up a keyboard player locally. Like I've played for the Beautiful tour, the Carole King musical. I played when they came to Hartford and when they came to New Haven. So that was a terrific experience, just getting to do a show that was currently running on Broadway, and you get to play the Broadway parts.
And that had, Carole King was the penultimate composer, and that musical is just a great score.
I really like the show. I mean, I think it's a step above most of the other jukebox musicals, because some of the jukebox musicals, the songs are really bent out of their normal shapes to serve the narrative, and Carole King's songs are basically her life.
I think it's probably one of the better ones. I mean, I always think Jersey Boys is the best of the jukebox musicals,
Yep.
But some of them are just awful.
Yes.
Although they're popular on Broadway right now. There's one about Tina Turner.
Yep.
That just opened and got incredible reviews. And there's one about the Temptations.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's, that trend is, I think it's because it's a safe thing for producers. They know that audiences will be drawn to a musical about someone familiar and popular like Cher or Tina Turner.
Yeah. Have you ever had any desire to compose anything on the pop style for a singer?
Not really. I mean, my style, my own personal style as a composer, I think I do incorporate pop elements in my style. So it's, I'm always not sure how to describe my style as a composer, because I borrow from so many different elements, and but I just really enjoy, especially with my organ music, writing in different styles for pipe organ that people wouldn't expect, like a rock and roll style, for hearing a hymn performed in a rock and roll style or a doo-wop style. I think it's just kind of fun to do.
But there have been some organists who have crossed over and become pop sensations.
Yeah.
I worked at Wolf Trap for a couple of years when I was going to school, and there was a guy named Virgil Fox.
Oh, yeah.
And he would sell out, the theater, it's like Tanglewood, but it has a lawn area of maybe 7,000 people can sit on. And he would sell out and people would come clamoring. And I never dreamed that the organ could, as an instrument or organ player, could become a pop sensation.
He was kind of the Liberace, I guess, of pipe organ. I mean, he had fantastic technique, but he also in organ music, and he's very, he wears leather pants and these huge heeled leather boots, and I don't know how he plays the pedal in boots, but he just does. I mean, and he's not just flash; he has incredible technique as well.
Yeah, somebody sent me a photograph of an organist that's doing a performance during the holiday season in the area. And one of the press photos has the guy sitting there with the pedals, and he's wearing boots. And I thought, whoa, it's like, what if he were wearing tap shoes? How much of that, boot sound will come up through the organ?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I actually wear jazz shoes. I mean, they're called organ shoes, but they're basically jazz shoes. They have very thin soles, and they have a higher heel, so you can rock back and forth between different pedals. But I mean, I couldn't wear the type of boots that this guy was wearing.
Well, I got to say, you must have a huge car, because if you tote your organ to concerts along with the podium.
I actually have one of the tiniest cars out there. I have a Toyota Yaris, it's not an organ. It's an 88 key electric piano keyboard that I kind of wedge in, and no one else can ride in the car with me when that happens, because it goes into the passenger seat too.
Can you? Is there such a thing as an electronic organ now that like you have a keyboard? Can you change the programming so it sounds like?
Oh yeah, you can make different sounds, but there's no substitute for a real pipe organ.
Okay. Well, David, it's been such a pleasure having you here today. I mean, we've done interviews before, but we've never been able to have the time to talk about a whole variety of things. So before we go, if people want to hear your music, your website is?
It's davidkidwell.net.
Okay. And the Holyoke Civic Symphonies?
HolyokeCivicSymphony.org.
And I remember the Goodspeeds, and that's goodspeed.org. Next week, we'll be talking with folks from the Albany Berkshire Ballet, and we're going to leave you today with a little music from Pink Martini, which is one of my favorite lounge bands. And what makes it kind of special is that Ari Shapiro, the host of NPR's All Things Considered, sings regularly with them. So we're going to end with one of Ari Shapiro's performances with Pink Martini. Thanks to Peter Coles, our chief engineer today, the folks from Westfield Technical Academy who staff Studio 120. We'll be back next week with the Albany Berkshire Ballet.
I'm back. And here to sing it, please welcome the White House correspondent for National Public Radio, Mr. Ari Shapiro. I'm here to see you. Won't you please open the door? Brought you flowers, been waiting hours, can't stand it anymore. So here's what happened when you were napping. I just went out for a snack. I was feeling famished and then I vanished. But now I'm back. Now I'm back. Had a snack. Now he's back. My heart is burning for that love of ours, yearning for that sea of stars. Let me in so I can prove to you that no one else can love you, girl, the way that I do. Oh, how I miss you, I wanna kiss you, hold you close from dusk until dawn. So let's just make up, and when you wake up, I promise not to be gone. You know I love you, dream only of you, so please cut me some slack. I went away just a couple of days, but now I'm back. Now he's back. Cut him slack. Now he's back. Shiver! My boys are waiting, gotta get something to eat. You better go now, I hope you know now. Love you, that is a fact. Gotta hurry, but don't you worry, babe. 'Cause I'll be back. Yeah, back. Trust me, babe. This time I mean it. Look, Chana's waiting backstage. She and I are gonna go get a bite of Musso and Frank's. Can I get you anything? Say, you don't have any cash I could borrow, do ya? It's alright. Chana will spot me. She always does. I'll be back. You'll see.